this is a project I'm working on, and I just want to give you guys a sneak peek of how the workflow is. All right, so this is a project management tracker that I'm working on, and I'm literally building the structure of the template, simulate it with some dummy data, and then create a very nice dashboard. Now, the interesting thing about this tracker is that it's quite different from the tracker that we usually build and work on. All right, so this is usually the way we track a lot of things based on a calendar table. So there's a calendar over here with the day of the week and all of that, and then we have a set of activities. So this one is types of inspections, and then each day you can actually indicate whether you've completed or not. This is also similar to this tracker over here, which we developed for a user. Let me show you this one. This one has a dashboard, and there's a dashboard where you're actually building a Power BI version of it. And then this other tracker, this one, all right, this one also is tracking activities, submission of cards by managers, and so there's like a structure like this, and we simulate it where they have to also select from a drop down list, and then we created a dashboard. So there's a dashboard that we created for them, and they were happy. The client was very happy. In fact, we even got a 5-star review for that. Let me show you the review from this amazing customer. So when you scroll all the way down to our website, you're gonna find the review, and the review is just right in here. So if I open it up, Shexel was incredible to work with. I came to them with a custom project that wasn't simple. They absolutely delivered it. They took the time to understand what I needed, offered solid recommendations. So that's actually the review we got. We are doing a lot of things, 474 reviews. All right, so we put together this nice dashboard. However, today we are working on a different tracker. This has a totally different arrangement. The calendar is over here just because the user want to be able to track different activities across, various columns, right? And then by inputting all of these important parameters, and then the overall goal is that they want to be able to capture some outcomes from whatever activity or whatever visit that they embark on, and then they want to be able to indicate whether whatever the outcome was acceptable or an action had to be taken, and things like that. And they give a deadline for closing this action. So we've already started building the template, and we already got like some feedback. So the client reverted with a list of parameters which have now been arranged such that every project name will have a corresponding project discipline, corresponding community focal point, corresponding developer focal point. So all of these column headers are in the approved list, which is like the setup list, right? And so we're going to pull all these important values, the corresponding value to the project name and the corresponding values, into our table. Now, whenever we are creating this, we are focusing on user experience, the user ergonomics. The templates must be user friendly so that you don't have to be doing too many repetitive work. So whenever you select the name from a drop down list, now the drop down list is even important because we want to control the data. The data must be controlled to exactly what has been provided in here, because we're going to use them as a lookup value to return all of these values into our table. All right, and so this brings us to an important topic for today, and that is how do we look up values and return corresponding values from other tables. So we're going to be using VLOOKUP for today. In fact, when it comes to returning values from different tables based on the lookup value, you can use VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, and index and match. But today we are focusing only on VLOOKUP. All right, so VLOOKUP always requires you to have a unique lookup value, and so what it means is that all of these values that we have here, they have to be unique. If for any reason they are not unique or they are not distinct from each other, then it's not going to return the exact match that we want, because all of these are exact matches to the lookup value. Okay, so the lookup value, we already have it here, and we are selecting from a drop down list to keep the names consistent. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to do something. We're going to use the VLOOKUP. So we go straight into our cell, and then we hit the equal sign, and that is how we start to write formula. Every time we're writing a formula, we use the equal sign, and then we type the function. Now, as we are typing the function, you want to be very fast with it. So use the tab key. That's going to select everything with the open parenthesis right there. And so once you have it in there, you don't have to start typing from the cell. When you do that, you probably miss the argument. So you need to come to the formula bar, and then you'll be able to see the argument, how it flows. The syntax of the function must be followed in order to be able to return the correct answer, right? So the lookup value is this very one, and that is the cell reference, right? So let's count A, B, C, D, D4, right? So the reference cell is D4, all right? So that is the lookup value, and then we hit the comma sign to continue the argument. And then now we are looking at the table array. So the table array is on another sheet. So we click on the approved list, and then we select our table array. Now, mind you can actually select the entire table, or you could select just a section of the table. Now, we want to be very precise with where we are returning our values. We don't want to confuse ourselves with a long table, even though we could actually select the entire table, and it's going to adjust dynamically for every entry that is brought into the table, because tables by default are flexible and they adjust automatically whenever we introduce another that data in there. So all formulas that are referencing tables will automatically expand the range of for any additional entry, but we rather stick to the precise range, knowing that there's no way they will ever exhaust this list because they have a lot of space way below to keep extending the values if you have a lot more values. Now, one thing we're going to do is that we're going to hit the comma sign and we continue with the column array. Now, what is the column where the return value is? The return value is, we have the lookup value, which is from this table, right? We are looking at it, is the same here. So the corresponding value that we are returning, and that is this one, right? That the column index for this is 2. Because this is the first column and this is the second column of the table. So we simply type 2, right, and hit the comma. And then we want an exact match. And if the exact match is not available, it should return and not available as an option. So that's the second one. And so we can simply write false or 0 because the first one is 1, the second one is 0. So I usually prefer 0. And that is the false, which is the exact match. So I literally hit enter, okay? And that's going to give me these values. Now, the thing is that one thing you need to bear in mind is that the table array can be changing as it moves further down. As you can see, if you look in the formula, you notice that the table array, which is supposed to be from B3 to J135, keeps changing. So what it means is that even if we deleted this and then we repeated it here, it's not going to give us the value. Even though over here, if you select it, it returns the value, but over here it does not. What is happening here is that the range has changed, but of course we don't want this column, the table range, to change. We want it to remain fixed at the exact range that we have selected. And so what we do is that we hit the F4. All right, so we click on this reference and then we click on F4. The first F4 introduces the $sign both in front of the column number and then the row number, and so that becomes an absolute reference for the first array or the first reference, and then we use the same thing for the second. And so the entire table array is logged. All right, so when we hit enter, then we're gonna get a value. So if I even delete this one and I select it over here, it's gonna return it, right? And so what I'm going to do is that I'll have to take my time to literally populate all of this, you know, the rest like this, and it keeps going. But the fact is that we are building a template, and so we don't have the time to keep populating. So what I'm going to do is that here is going to be blank by default. Here's going to be blank by default, and so I don't want anything to pull in here. And so what I'm going to say is that I'm going to use an if function to say if this cell is blank, return blank. If not, return the entire VLOOKUP, right? So I'm just going to start right in front of the equal sign. I'm going to enter if D4 is D4, if D4 is equal to blank, return blank. If not, return this. So it's going to return exactly, and I'll close it with the parentheses, right? So that is pretty much, I just have to close it with the parentheses and I hit enter. So you see that all of these blanks are gone. And so we've sort of cleaned our formula with the if function basically. Now what I'm trying to do is that I want to be able to drag this formula. We already know that the table array is logged. We already know that this VLOOKUP is not, basically the lookup value is not an absolute reference, neither is it a mixed reference. It's literally what we call a relative reference because it changes dynamically. If you cross it, let me drag it over here. If I drag it here, I'm going to get an error. What it means is that this lookup value, instead of staying here, and then we will probably have to change the column array also, the column index for the next return value, because we are going to return the value for this lookup value based on this one. So this column would be on the third column index, right? So let's say 3. All right, so what is happening here is that the lookup value has shifted again. So I'm going to drag it all the way here and I hit enter, and that's how this really tends to populate. So what it means is that we need to manually be working. We don't have time for that. Okay, so this same formula, what I'm going to do is that let's take our time and come here. The column index, which is 1 all the way to, so let's put some numbers here. 1 is the first column index all the way here, right? So let's fill in series. I'm going to delete that later on. So this is the first column index, the second column index, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the sixth column index, right? So we know that this is second, this is third, this is fourth, this is 5 and 6. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to lock this one to stay in only one column, but the row numbers can change. The column cannot change, but the row numbers can change. And over here, I'm going to reference these ones. When I reference these ones, the row number can change. but the column numbers can change, but the row number cannot change. And so this one becomes a mixed reference. This one becomes a mixed reference, and the table array becomes an absolute reference. We've already done absolute reference. All right, so let's have a look at it really quick. So I'm going to log this one. So this one, I want the column to remain fixed. So I put a $sign right in front of the D. To do that, you just press F4 until the $sign comes in front of the D. I hit enter, and then I do the same thing for instead of using numbers manually, I'll rather delete it, and I'll just select this one, which is a reference to the column index that I've already simulated here. And so I'm going to lock the row number, okay, but the column numbers can change. So I just hit F4 to ensure that the $sign comes in front of the 2, and I hit enter. There's one that you need to lock. So let's lock the VLOOKUP, the other another lookup value over here. So let me just lock that, which is F4. We are locking the column, right? And that's it right there. So once I drag it all the way here, you notice it populates, and I double click all the way down. Okay, I drag it all the way down. You notice everything populates. So once you go all the way up, okay, you notice everything has populated. So this is basically using VLOOKUP, but using absolute reference, relative reference for the lookup value, and then the column index also use a relative reference and be able to populate it. So this is an important part of the calculation, and for that reason, I'll simply hide it. Okay, so this is how I manage to work fast without having to type as many VLOOKUP functions all in various columns, and then having to manually change the column index for each of the columns that we are working with. But we rather use cell reference for the column index, and then we made the index the references mixed reference, and then the lookup value also became a mixed reference. So I hope you find this video insightful. I'm going to see you guys in another video. Bye for now. Cheers.